4, 3, 2. All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. We have tons of amazing questions that you all have submitted offline, so I don't want to take too much time in the introduction, but I do want to make sure I go over some quick housekeeping rules so that we all feel comfortable and confident in this next hour. I like to start off these sessions by reminding us, even though we don't need reminders, lots of crazy things going on in the world. Seems like everything is topsy-turvy. You could be doing anything else with your time, but you are spending this hour with us intentionally. So I just want to say thank you. I see you. We would love for you to participate and really maximize this time that you have with us here virtually. You can participate by turning your cameras on. We believe in visibility here at Power to Fly. This is a safe space, and you can just, start to network with us by turning your cameras on. If you don't want to turn your cameras on, all good. Please use the chat box. You can write anything that comes to mind, any dreams you've had last night, any of tips and tricks of your own. Can't stress enough, we want you to participate, so feel free to use the chat box. If you have any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie. You can write to me privately and I will raise your question or your reflection to our guest speaker and keep you anonymous. With that said, if you do hop off mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. And I like to invite people to be present with us for this hour. So what's that mean? Stop multitasking if you can. I know that we are like the kings and queens of multitasking these days, but I invite you to stop multitasking, close those tabs, put your phone down so that you can really participate with us and speak whenever something comes to mind. And then you can rewatch this video later from the beginning and take notes vigorously there. But we would love for you to participate with us. The last thing that I'll say is we would love for you to follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store. And that's a nice way for me to start to introduce myself to folks who have not joined a Chat and Learn where I've moderated before. So again, my name is Mariella Marie. I live in Patagonia. I'm originally from California, and I love to pick the beautiful minds of our guest speakers that come to the Chat and Learn program here at Power to Fly. I really love to bring our conversation to emotional intelligence and how we can be more mindful about how we can deepen our emotional intelligence in the workplace and at home. So I might reflect and philosophize there. You're welcome to join me if you're interested in speaking about emotional intelligence. And I invite you all to support the project that I'm working on that is called the Positive Force Team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org, sign up for our newsletter, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat there. All right, so without further ado, I'm really excited to hear what our guest speaker has to share with us today. I know she's going to drop a lot of knowledge. So Kimberly, let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Yeah, so hello everyone. I am beyond excited to be here with you today. My name is Kimberly B Cummings. I'm the founder of a company called Manifest Yourself, which is a leadership development company. So I go into organizations and teach them how to hire, recruit, retain, and engage their women and people of color. I had the pleasure of meeting the Power to Fly founder during my time in my last corporate job. So formerly, I was the director of global diversity talent acquisition strategy at a Fortune 100 company in the financial services space. I'm very excited to have an open conversation with all of you today.
Awesome. So I know we're going to learn more about your story as you go through answering these questions that folks have submitted previous to the chat. But I would love for you to set the stage for us and set the scene for us today by going over some principal themes that you plan on covering in today's conversation.
Definitely. So we are going to be talking about all things career and leadership development today. No question is off the table, is too big, is too small. We have some great questions that were put in already. However, please re-navigate us if we want to talk about something different. The key themes that we've talked about today and we've learned, we want to talk about creating a career strategy. I am a big believer in that you have to create your own career strategy. I do not care what your company says, what your boss says, what they say is your career path. You have to take control of your career. And to do that, you need a strategy to make sure how you want to move is aligned with how you would like to move, not necessarily anyone else. We want to talk about having careers that you love. We spend how much time in our jobs? How much each week? Sometimes it's 40, sometimes 60. I know I've hit some 70, 80-hour work weeks myself. We know that Saturday and Sunday are not enough time to make up for the time we're spending in your job. So it's important that we have something that we love. And last but not least, we want you to be able to advocate for yourself. Advocating for yourself isn't just talking about salary negotiation, it's about the everyday workplace interactions that you have with your peers, your managers, your leadership, direct reports, everyone. So we want to make sure that you are clear on how to advocate for yourself in the workplace.
Awesome. So thank you for setting the stage for us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so I can pull up these awesome questions that you all have submitted previous to the chat. And as Kimberly mentioned, if you have a question that comes to mind and you weren't able to submit it, again, we still love to hear from you. You're taking the time out of your schedule to participate with us today, so we want to cater to you today. If you hear your question come up, just let us know you're on the call. And if this is not your question, but you still would like to chime in, we would love to hear from you. So you can write in the chat box or you can hop off mute and just let us know anything that you'd like to share. So let's start with this first question, Kimberly. I've been working in my field for a while and I know I'm not happy, but I have no idea what job or industry would be a better fit for me. How can I connect with my passions and identify current working possibilities?
I love that. That's probably one of the most frequent questions that I get. Essentially, I am where I am. I'm not sure what I want to do next. How can I make sure it's the right step? Like we can change that around however we'd like, but that's really the question is how do you determine what your next step is? So in my book, I have a process that I talk about to really assess what your skills are. So what I ask every person to do is write down all of the jobs that you've ever had, every single one, the long resume, not the short one, and think about what are the skills that you've acquired. So literally write down every single thing that you have learned. So, for instance, when I worked in financial services and human resources, I learned how to do an analysis of large data sets. I had to build stakeholder engagement and buy-in for my plans. I was deep into the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, specifically in talent acquisition, literally listing all of the experiences and skills that you've gained for all of your jobs, and then go through and literally cross off everything you never want to do again. Because we all know there's things that you never want to touch, and circle the things that you would like to do. And like, okay, if I had to do this for the rest of my life, or at least the next 2 years, I would like to continue to do these things. And then start thinking about the environments. What do you love? What gets you excited? What makes you happy? So for me, I can literally do my work almost anywhere. However, things that get me excited are creative environments. I want to be in an environment where things are brand new. So I love working in startup environments. I love being the first to kind of build something out. So start to match some of those passions with your interests. And then don't think about it as in you have to do this one thing for the rest of your life, right? Think about what you feel like you can do for the next 2 years that will help you get to a long-term vision that you may have. I think many times it's hard to make a decision because we feel like we have to stick with it, right? We feel like we have to stay there for 5, 10, 15 years. But when we look at many millennials and Gen Xers, we're staying a little bit less at these jobs. It's not necessarily we have to stay for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. People are doing more like 2 to 5 year stints and being a-okay moving to the next thing. That sometimes releases a lot of that anxiety around making a decision.
I love essentially the self reflection piece that is so important as someone is figuring, okay, I have no idea where to go, and I love reminding myself that the only thing constant in the world is change. At least it
Yeah.
seems like. And so, how can I stay, you know, how can I be flexible so that I can make sure, okay, even if I've planned something 5 years in advance, whatever's happening right now, I'm honoring that present moment. I'm honoring my talents and my gifts, setting my boundaries, because that's a big question too. Like, how do we set our boundaries to make sure that we're not like,
Yeah.
over giving or experiencing burnout? I would love to just ask, in your personal journey, has there ever been a moment that it just reached your intuition that you knew, okay, this is not it, or this is it? Because I find that we're kind of displaced from our intuitive thinking. I don't know what you have to say about that, but I'd love to hear you reflect on that with me.
I would say, of course, like 110%. Um, I think I've had that feeling. One of my favorite workshops, I always ask the question of what is that first feeling you have on Monday morning when you log on? And most times, like 9 times out of 10, I have a lot more people saying that they look up at the ceiling and wonder like why they're there, like who is going to ruin their day today. Like, I need to change my job. That's what everybody says most of the time. Very few people say they actually love their job. And for me, I've noticed a pattern when I was working in full-time jobs, and I just resigned to do my business full-time in May. So please know I am very connected to, to what the world of work is like, and I do career development. But for me, about every 2.5 to 3 years, I get bored. And I have that feeling of like, why am I here? I'm a quick start. I've been a high performer in many of my jobs. So when I get bored, I get restless. And at first I thought, I was listening to all of the baby boomers who told me, you need to stick it out. You need to stay forever. And, you'll just work your way up. Like, my dad is a retired veteran. My mom was an educator. Um, my dad has been in every job and stayed until he got a pension, every single one. So moving was not something that he believed in. So for me, when I wanted to make moves, I felt like I shouldn't. Like, I should just stick it out. I should just wait. I should just wait. Because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what my dad said to do. But once I kind of freed myself from that, understanding what happens in different industries, understanding what I want to do and that it's okay to move, things got a little bit easier for me. And I learned that I can advocate if I wanted to do something different. And if it wasn't possible, I had the decision to either stay or go. So for example, I spent almost 10 years in higher education working in career services offices. So my background is very unique when it comes to career services and career and leadership development, because I'm literally trained to teach people how to get better jobs. I've worked with folks ages 18 who don't know what to do with their life, like at all the way through people who are in their 60s who want to figure out how do they put their experiences together to finally have some joy because they're getting close to retirement. And in higher ed, many times, a lot of people stay a very long time. So in order for you to move up, it's very common for you to move into different jobs. You don't really see people move from counselor to assistant director to associate director to senior associate director to director in one place unless they have a lot of patience. If you want to move faster, you have to hop around. And for me, when I realized that, I had a lot more career satisfaction for myself. And also just realizing when it was me really hating what I did versus not liking my job anymore. Because I think there's a big difference. I worked in financial services before I started in higher ed, and I was miserable. Y'all, I got like disrespectfully miserable. That's how tired I was. I remember like my last few months, I had this client who came into the bank, and I was a personal banker. So people who talked to you in the bank, I was in a high net worth area. So I did annuities and investments and loans and mortgages and all that mess. And I had a client who came in who was nasty. Oh my gosh, he was so nasty. And he's like, I'm just going to close all my accounts. And I looked at him and I said, would you like check or cash? And my manager was looking at me like, aren't we supposed to save? I was like, would you like check or cash? That's when I knew I had to go, because I just didn't care anymore. And I think there's a difference between like, knowing it's time. For me, it was like, I need to no longer be in financial services. I probably could have gotten fired that day. I didn't. But I was beyond the point of return versus in higher ed. It was, I'm tired of like this job. I'm tired of like this level. I want to grow and learn so I can move forward. So there's a big difference in when you're kind of deciding what to do.
Thank you so much for sharing that part of your journey. I know that folks can resonate. And actually, we've got the chat box lighting up. So I'm just going to call out what folks are dropping in the chat box. This word toxicity and toxic workplace is coming up as people are hearing you reflect in this moment. So Anna writes, I have been in what I feel is a toxic environment for 2 years, and my energy has become toxic. Joan writes, I stayed in a toxic job for much longer. And Joan also writes, I like that you're a job hopper because you go to different jobs and careers. Can you reflect on this with us? How to know? I mean, you're basically saying, there is a difference between I am not intellectually stimulated anymore and I need to just, continue on with my path versus like, this is crippling me and I'm becoming a bad person because I'm not exposing myself to what can fulfill me. How do we navigate those toxic waters? What do you recommend doing if someone is listening right now and they're in a toxic work environment? What should they do right now?
So number one, if it's impacting your health, you got to go. I don't care. You got to go. I'm not saying leave without having another job, but you need to start working on that exit plan, because once it starts impacting like your life outside of work, that's just not okay. Like your health, your mental health, your relationships, it's time to really figure something out and do it faster, do it sooner rather than later. If you have to take behavioral health leave, if you need to do anything, don't let a job kind of take over your life in that way. I believe in having hustle seasons where, you're putting in more hours, like you're trying to get that promotion. It's going to take more time and effort. But when that hustle turns into toxicity, that's very, very different. Um, for me, when I think about job hopping, I don't even like to say job hopping because I feel like it gets a bad rap. I feel like when we see job hopping, you see that young person who doesn't stay in a job more than a year and they're just moving, like trying different things out. They had a bad day at work and they apply to a job. I look at it more as understanding your industry. Like, what is happening in your industry? How are people moving? In my book, a lot of times I really talk about how to identify the key players in your industry, in your company, to understand what their career paths are, to inspire you to understand how you can move and think about it much more strategically. That's why we need that strategic plan that I talked about. So if well, let me back up. With my clients, one of the first things I say is, what is the 10-year vision when you close your eyes? If I said, where do you want to be in 10 years? I want you to answer me in like 5 seconds or less. What does that look like? And then, okay, in order to get there, where do you need to be in 5 years? Perfect. In order to get to the 5-year goal, where do we need to be in 2 years? And then how can we start working in those 6-month increments of what are the steps you need to take to get to the 6 months, to get to the 12 months, to get to the 18, to get to the 2 years that lines you up to your 5-year and 10-year strategy. So when you're moving, what is happening in your industry? What do you need to acquire? So when I was talking about my career in higher ed, I wanted to become a director of career services. So when I looked at people in my field, I saw, okay, obviously I need career counseling down. I need I need undergrad. Once I had undergrad, okay, I need to start working with graduate students. That's a whole different population. I was lucky that I was almost a generalist for a very long time. So I worked with everyone outside of like lawyers and doctors. So I had students and alum coming from all different areas. So I learned very quickly how to see trends within different areas. Once I had like the students down, I started working with alumni populations. Once I had that, okay, I need to do programming. Once I had that, now I need to pull back and do less counseling. And I need to determine how to work with employers to recruit our students. Because when I looked at directors of career services, I saw all of these skill sets coming together. And I knew if I wanted to apply to get to one of those jobs in 10 years, I needed to kind of move around. Once I mastered what I had, I was like, okay, what is the next skill set I can add to my tool belts? But the last thing I'll say on that, and in job hopping, I think even when you have a strategy, I'm going to contradict myself now, you have to leave room for magic. And by magic, I mean just opportunities that may come around from being in environments like Power to Fly, other professional environments, people in your network. Right when I was applying for jobs as a director of career services, that's when I moved into corporate America, into DE&I work. And you could not have told me I was ever going to do that. I was in job searches and I was coming up as top two, and I was number two. I was not number one like Beyonce. And I had some really, really bad job searches. Like, I don't cry about jobs, but I was bawling, boohoo, crying over jobs because the searches were that bad when I didn't get the job. But someone met my husband at an event. So not even me, met my husband. And he's like, my wife is looking for something that she's thinking about DE&I work, but also career services. She reached out to me. We connected over email. It was the holidays. So nobody talks over the holidays between Thanksgiving and like New Year's. Right before Christmas, she reached out and said, hey, there's a job that looks like what your husband said you'd be interested in. Again, didn't talk to me. And she's like, can I send your resume? That was a Monday. They called me Tuesday. I interviewed Thursday, Friday, interviewed again on Tuesday, had an offer by Wednesday before Christmas. And I moved into corporate that quick. That's magic. I think sometimes when we have a plan, we also have to leave room for flexibility of what could potentially happen that may also be great. And that opportunity helped me grow so much in ways I hadn't imagined and align much more with my company now versus just doing traditional career and leadership development.
Fascinating. Well, congratulations. And also thanks for sharing your story because that's such an inspiration. I know that some folks really need to hear, how you were able to navigate those waters and just also, take that leap of faith and know that, I'm willing, I'm able. It's just a matter of time and like that magical opportunity that you're mentioning. So folks are ringing your praises in the chat box. So thank you so much, Kimberly, for shouting that out. Speaking of knowing the industry, let's move on to this next question here. Again, if you hear your question, let us know you're here. We would love to know that you're here, and maybe you can hop off mute if you'd like to dive in deeper. So, any advice on how to best identify jobs or industries that are not a good fit for you? I'm worried that I'm being swayed by the recent hype around startups and tech jobs, and like most people, I can't afford to make the wrong choice.
Oh gosh, that's a really great question. And I think y'all are going to get tired of me because my answer to a lot of things are relationships. I literally have a chapter in my book called Relationships Are Everything. The only way to really and truly understand a company, a job, a leader that you have not worked with or worked in is to have great relationships and be able to find out. In the same way that when you go into jobs, you are putting your best face on. Everything is amazing. I give the example all the time. Like my husband and I are having a bad day and we were just arguing. I have a new puppy and he was learning how to use the bathroom on my floors. You are not going to know when I walk into an interview because that's none of your business. I'm going to walk in and be so excited and so gracious as my puppy cries at the door, ruining my floors and my carpet. After I argue with my husband because he didn't want to clean it and I have to after I get off my interview. You're not going to feel that. And companies do the same thing. Companies put it all together. They make everything sound so amazing and so glorious when you walk in. They will tell you that it's not that bad. They will tell you they have a strategic plan. And when you walk in, you barely have an office and a computer. And the strategic plan is put across 18 different Word docs where there's a whole bunch of spelling errors. The only way for you to get that information is to speak with other people who can give you that insider information. That is literally the only way. Of course, you can read reviews on, let's say, Glassdoor, on LinkedIn, on PaySkill. You can kind of go through all of these things to kind of learn a little bit more. But however, I always say that's a grain of salt, right? People generally write bad reviews when they're unhappy. You don't really get to see a lot of good reviews. So you want to kind of take that plus the relationships that you're building. That's why environments where you can network are so important. So you can reach out and get more information so you can truly understand what the environment is. And if you don't have contacts, then it's making sure that you prepare interview questions so that you can have clarity on what's actually happening. And don't be afraid to kind of push the needle a little bit. And if you don't get a great response, maybe that's not the opportunity for you. I remember when I had an interview in higher ed, I believe it was for a director job, and the president of the university wanted to interview with me. And he said, well, I look on your resume, and he commented on my job hopping. And he's like, I feel like you only stay at jobs like 2 to 3 years. We really want someone to stay like 5 to 10. And I explained my rationale of moving. I'm like, I'm always looking for new opportunities to upskill myself. And he's like, I know, but what would it take for you to stay here longer? And I was like, with all due respect, what would it take? What would you do to retain me here for longer? He didn't like that response. And I did not get the job, the recruiter told me. But I also think that the company should be thinking about how to retain me. Like what new ideas, what new opportunities, what new developments should be happening in order for me to be excited and feel like I can continuously learn. He was essentially saying he wanted me to sit in that job and just be happy to be there, regardless of whether I was bored or not. So that wasn't a good fit. So when you ask really great questions, make sure you're listening to the answers and don't be afraid to walk away. Again, we spend way too much time in these jobs every single day. You want to make sure that you're in an environment that gels with who you are.
Yes, Kimberly, I'm on mute here, just like, yes, yes, yes.
And just so you know, I wasn't always like this. I was not. I think earlier on in my career, I was too afraid to lose the opportunity. I did not want to ask the hard questions. I was always afraid that I would make someone angry and I wouldn't get the offer if I pushed too hard. And I think that's absolutely positively normal. I think as I've grown in my career, as I've grown in I'm learning even more about career and leadership development, learning more about what people expect in the interview process. And the last 3 or 4 jobs I had in my career before I did my business, they were all inaugural roles where I had to build everything out from scratch. I just had a blank slate. I had to always push the needle. So I got comfortable pushing. This isn't something that I naturally have. I had to get comfortable in being comfortable that I know that I'm a great worker. I know I bring impact and value. And if I don't gel here, I know someone else will appreciate my skills. So just know I would not have asked that question that I just shared with you when I first started my career at all, at all.
But I love that. I love that because it is a two-way street, as Joan is writing in the chat box. And I love that, when we can remember that this is a partnership, to go back
Yeah.
to your point about relationships, I'm not going to be a slave to your trade. I'm going to participate and give what I need. And then when I'm done, or when it's not gelling anymore, of course we can try to resolve conflict. But if my spirit is not being fulfilled, I need to be listening to that. So I love that you are like bringing us back to that awareness. Thank you for asking that tough question. I hope that folks out there can take some inspiration from this. Kimberly, I know you said you weren't always like that, but I think that that's so empowering. And also it's like, okay, maybe that's a blessing in disguise. Let's say if someone wants you to just be comfortable forever and ever, even though you're not being fulfilled and you're not, intellectually stimulated and showing your best skills and bringing that to the table. Or if you don't have space at the table, but there, it's a lot of lip service, it's better that they say no, so that you can continue to ask that question, and see if someone else says, yeah, I would love to figure out what you need to stay, right? And then that's a whole different conversation. So thank you for that, Kimberly. I have a private question here that I like to raise. What are some critical questions to ask when building relationships via informational interviews to learn about careers and environments? I'll read that again. What are some critical questions to ask when building relationships via informational interviews to learn about careers and environments?
So I love that. So the first piece of that, and of course, this is time sensitive. If you have time to build an authentic relationship, so let's say you don't need the information for your interview next week, really think about building the relationship the way you'd build a friendship, the way you'd build a romantic partnership. You don't need to go for the gusto right away and think about conversion. The best relationships take time. At the beginning of my book tour, in June when we started, I had one of my mentors on the call, Myleik Teal. She's the founder of a company called Curlbox. And she always jokes and says that, I didn't want to be Kimberly's mentor. She tells everybody that. She's like, I didn't. So I didn't have time for more mentees. Like I just did not. But I literally worked years. I went to events that she was at. I always asked great questions, whether it was in person or whether it was offline, online, whenever it was. I made it known that like I wanted to get to know her, just by showing up and being there and being my full self and making sure that I got on her radar. So if you have time, I would say work on building the relationship organically, getting to know who that person is, what they value, what they don't value, showcasing your own impact and value. One of the greatest ways to show impact and to get a mentor to see you is just to make sure that you are implementing what they share with you and you're showing up your best possible. When I worked in corporate America, whenever I saw young women killing it on a call and really showing up as their best selves, I would email and say, how can I help you? Like, let's have a call. I want to get to know you. What can I do? So doing it authentically and getting to know them and their career is great if you have time. If you do not have time, and you need to figure out what is the company culture like, I would ask questions along the lines of, what do you feel your biggest challenges have been at this company when you're looking to get work done? Is there any type of red tape that you find that you always run into when you're trying to get things approved? Who are your stakeholders who you currently work with? Could you tell me about the process of sharing new ideas within your company? Do you feel like it is a top-down approach with leadership, or is everyone's voice heard equitably? Um, Tell me about the diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy at the company. Um, I'd love to learn if you know of the like retention rates of employees at this level. That's one of my favorite because they may not be able to tell you the actual rates, but I think it's really important when you see, especially if you see millennials and Gen Xers, stay more than 5 years, that's generally a really good indication of culture, because people stay longer than the normal, like 2 to 3 years, and ask about the upward mobility process. What does that look like? So they can't tell you about retention, like what is the process to get promoted? And ask about performance appraisals. What is the process that they use to evaluate their employees? And some people like to go even deeper and ask about how do you give back into the community? Do you have employee resource groups? But I would pick the biggest bang for your buck. And of course, ask about your leader if they know them and try and dig a little bit deeper into that. But some of the questions, I think many times we want to focus questions the way we were taught early on, like, what are your company core values? And like, tell me about, like, people would say, tell me about the culture of the organization. But you want to dig a little bit deeper, specifically into their people, because those are the questions that really allude to culture. Someone can tell you the values, but if their values aren't lived every single day in the experience, it may be completely different.
So for people, I love this advice that you're sharing. And so I often host virtual career fairs here at Power to Fly. And I love when I get that like really tough question and it's like, ooh, I'm okay. So let's bring this question up and see what happens, giving them the mic. For example, what is your company doing about corporate responsibility, for example? And waiting to hear what that response is, and seeing, if someone is expecting change by offering their service or expecting change because they just want to call someone out. It's a different scenario. I think that sometimes
Very
we're
different.
afraid, right? We're afraid to ask these tough questions because we don't want to seem like we're being confrontational. But I think, for example, if you really are passionate about social impact, corporate responsibility, there's a way to like kind of flavor that question so that you don't come
Exactly.
off so harsh. Can you give some tips for that for people who might be afraid of asking those hard questions, but they really want to, make change and take up space in that realm, especially if that company doesn't have the proper response?
I would say something along the lines of, can you tell me about the efforts your company makes here? Don't be offended if the person doesn't know, because many times people may be kind of pushed away from that area. Or you can even say something like, can you tell me about how people get involved with these types of efforts? Or what do the employee resource groups, how do they get involved in the company's mission and vision, and community efforts? I think those questions can sometimes be hard depending upon the person who you speak to, because some people, like, they will not work in a company and a job if they can't be involved in this way. Other folks are a-okay. So it depends. I remember someone actually asked me that philanthropy question. I didn't know one time. And I was like, I need to go reach out to our Office of Corporate Responsibility or go take a look on their website, because I wasn't sure. However, I'm deeply involved most of the time in the Women's Network and the Black Engagement Network at whatever company I'm at. So I give back through those organizations, but it looks very different than what's happening at the company level. So I would just be open to, if they don't know, not thinking that they don't necessarily do those things. That person may not be the person to ask.
Great. I just wanted to call that out because I love that, we are starting to see the relationship of work as just that, a relationship. And so, asking for what you need so that you can be more responsible and holding your boundaries and not pushing, yourself into, let's say, burnout or, compromising a belief just because you need the job. So thank you for that encouragement. We have a comment here from Darlene that says, Kimberly, you were a speaker at my company about 2 years ago. I've been working on your Stop Dreaming and Start Planning workbook ever since. So happy to be
Oh,
here.
thank you. Thank you. I love when people who have seen me before. I'm like, I feel like I do so much, but I feel like I may not know the people. So when someone tells me, it always makes me feel special.
Yes, and actually, that's a good segue. We would love to know more about this book that you've been touring, and how we can get our hands on it. What was the process? Why did you feel like you needed to, put words on a page and share that?
Oh gosh, well, I happen to have the book right here. It's always right here now. It's called Next Move, Best Move, Transitioning into a Career You'll Love. It just released on June 9th with Wiley Publishing. So it is available wherever books are sold: Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Target, Amazon. Of course, it is everywhere. But for me, it was about access. When I worked in career services, and I mean across the board for undergraduate, graduate, alumni, many times the people who came into the office, there was dramatically less women and people of color. And there was this need or feeling that you had to prepare before coming into the office. And same way in the workforce, like you feel like you have to prepare before going for the promotion. When you think about rates of women applying to jobs versus men, about meeting the qualifications, women have to meet almost 100% of the qualifications in their mind in order to apply versus men apply when it's significantly less. They're like, well, I can just do it. And I wanted to put something out there that was actionable that can help people really go through their own career development process. So in the book, I walk you through determining your core values, what are your skills, how to build relationships, determining your professional brand, how to know when it's time to go and leave that job, salary negotiation. I'm very excited about this book, and not just because I'm like telling my stories and just giving key information. However, at the end of each chapter, I have something called Your Next Move. It's titled after my podcast. And it literally tells you what you need to do. So if you want to kind of read at a high level, you can kind of skip just a little bit and just read the Your Next Move sections. And it literally tells you what to do in order to navigate your career. I essentially wanted a manual that I probably needed, and it would have made things a little bit easier. But it's based off the work I've done for myself and for hundreds of my clients. So I'm very excited to kind of have it out there. And I'm hoping that it's one of many. I'm going to put that out there and manifest it now. This is more for the individual. But the first chapter of this book is called Serving as a People Leader is Not a Rite of Passage, it's a privilege. Because I think people leadership is such a big piece of the workforce. People generally leave managers, not companies. So my next book, I'm hoping, I'm manifesting that already. Part of the series will be about people leadership, how to manage up, down, and across. But I talk about that a little bit in this book too.
Awesome. Yes, let's manifest that. We support you. We got folks writing in the chat box, signing up for, ordering that book. So appreciate you dropping that there. So we've got, let's see, a little over 20 minutes left. So I want to make sure we get through some more of these questions. And I do have some private questions that I'd like to flag as well. This question reads, is there a way to ask about the company's work-life balance culture, including unpaid overtime, etc., without seeming like you don't want to work past your hours?
Definitely. So I recommend asking all of these questions when you're speaking to the recruiter. Generally, the recruiter is doing that initial phone screening to determine if you're a great fit. I definitely recommend asking about salary at that time too. I think especially now more than ever, I think years ago, we used to say, don't ask about salary, don't ask about work-life balance, all of those things. But now I think it's changing, especially due to COVID-19, where we realized so many people didn't take vacation last year. By December, folks were burnt out because nobody took vacation. They were just working right through. And for many people, COVID-19 made the year even busier because of all the pivots that happened. That's some of those times where I was working those 70-hour weeks during COVID-19 to pivot the business. So I think it's important that we ask some of these questions. Number one, I say, see if you can find the information yourself before you ask these questions. There are a lot of things online that you're able to find just by going deeper into the HR website. Ask your mentors, contacts, et cetera. And if you can't find this information, don't be afraid to mention it. Because ultimately, if you don't have the answer to this information, if that's a determining factor for you in your job, you don't want to go through a process either that's not a great fit. I know one of my friends loves to travel. And if she doesn't have at least like 21 days of vacation, it's really not going to be a good fit. If someone comes back and says 10 days, she's going to say no. Like, you don't want to figure out that information out, determine that you love the job, and then you find out when they give you an offer. So it's really, really important that you kind of get this information either online from your contacts or from asking the recruiter.
Absolutely. Love this information that you're sharing. Thank you so much. We've got folks dropping their praise as well in the chat box. Fred is going to get the book. Great information. Danielle says, I was hooked after the first chapter. So great. I'm excited that you all are sharing knowledge with Kimberly here. With that said, I want to hold for a light pause to see if someone wants to hop off mute, voice a reflection or a question. Now is your time to shine. I like to have this intentional space to do that in case someone needs the encouragement. So light pause, hop off mute if you feel called to do so. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. And if not, it's okay. We've got more questions. So if you do want to hop off mute, you can. Oh, perfect. Go for it.
Hi. Sorry, this is Darlene. My video is not working, but this is probably so not appropriate, but Kimberly, do you speak at companies in general? Like, okay, because I'm part of a program that we're really trying to focus just career development, career understanding for everyone, not just people in the know. And so I was thinking of maybe kicking it off with someone speaking. So I will touch base. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I can pop. I know Mariella said she's going to send my email and all that contact information out. But yes, I average probably 70 plus speaking engagements a year, most of which are companies privately. So please feel free to reach out.
Will do.
Awesome. Thank you for hopping off mute. Anyone else want to hop off mute, voice their question or reflection? Now's your
I don't
time
want to call anyone out, but I feel like, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Danielle may have a question because I feel like she made like the question face, but she didn't want to ask.
I do have a question.
I knew it.
Sure. So yes, my name is Danelle. I work in tech. I actually work in fintech. But my question, so I already have your book and I've been reading it. And so my question was around your ideas around managing up, which is definitely something I've incorporated in my career over the years. It's how I became a manager myself, basically. So now I'm managing this large team and I'm learning to manage down, but I'm finding managing up to be like really complex now. Do you have any tips around how do you kind of balance both? Because they're both really necessary in this job.
That is a great question. And I'm happy that I read your question face. I had a feeling. So I think in the same way you manage down, you probably understand the atmosphere that your team has. You may understand what person needs what, right? This person hates to be called out. They never want to be called out. You need to pull them to the side, whether it's praise or whether it's constructive criticism. They need to be spoken about on the side. You know the team member who needs a reminder, right? Because they barely know how to use their Outlook and they're never going to give it to you on time unless they get a reminder for this. You understand who needs a little bit more time to work on assignments. You have to understand, I think when it's managing up, I think it's a teach different in that understanding what your leaders need, what gives them comfort, what showcases your best work and the work of your team, and figuring out how to best communicate that proactively. So for instance, for people who are micromanagers, I always recommend making sure that you schedule a regular cadence of meetings. So they may not have a one-on-one with you, but you better have a one-on-one with them. How can you make sure that your agenda speaks to your work, all of the work of your team, so that if they have a question, they're able to fall back on that agenda and it tells them and shows them what you're doing, how you're working. Some leaders, if you want to start dropping in their ear that you're ready for a promotion, it's how can you proactively schedule some of those career meetings to have the discussion about what your next step is. My favorite question to ask when you want to think about promotion is, what is it that you would need to see from me in order to know that I'm ready for the next move in my career? And not asking when you want to make that move, asking 6 months to a year prior so that you can re-navigate your plans. Sometimes it's leaders. I've had leaders where they don't necessarily care if you don't hit the goal, but they need to understand what happened. Many times it's really about communication of how can you communicate what you're working on, what your results are, what is your value and impact? Because just the way you have your own job, I'm sure outside of managing, your manager does too. So it's how can you make sure that it's easy to understand what you're doing and what, if you have a large team, what your large team is doing, so that they don't have to be scrambling to figure out what's happening in their business.
Yes, I do have a large team. It's 14, 7 report directly to me, and then it's 7 under them. So,
and you're managing managers. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, so I'm also trying to coach managers as well. So yeah, it's a lot.
It most definitely is. I think it's figuring out what works for you. So, because I'm sure you know it works for you, it makes your team run a little bit smoother, but also understanding like what does your boss need to understand?
Definitely.
And figuring out, do you need skip level meetings? I know when I manage managers, I make sure that I meet with my team's direct reports at least once a quarter, so I can get in touch a little bit deeper. How do you create more synergy so that people know what everyone's working on and things work seamlessly versus, every day is a new day and it's a surprise.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Yes, thank you for hopping off mute. Congratulations and good luck. I love
Thank
that
you. Thank
you're
you.
able to join this session and you already are a fan of Kimberly's work. So thank you for hopping off mute. Would anyone else like to hop off mute? You can just let me know by one, hopping off mute like these women have done already, or you can raise your emoji hand. That will give me, a cue that you want to speak, or just write in the chat box again. We've got a little over 10 minutes left, so I do want to make sure that we are, letting your voice be heard in these last 10 minutes. Kimberly, of course, I've got a list of questions here, but I think what would be most fascinating would be if you could talk a little bit more about this career strategy creation development process. What do you want people to take away from this strategy?
So, number one, you need one. You really need one, and not just an idea in your mind. But one of the quotes, I'm trying to make sure I get it right. When I have a next move, best move presentation. One of the quotes I always say is that your problem is to bridge the gap between where you are and where you are not. And that's what a strategy does. In every career move you have, like you are here and there is some gap that is preventing you or someone does not understand in order for you to make that next move. Sometimes it's really, really large. Other times you're right there, but people just don't know so that you can hop over. So your strategy is really that plan to bridge that gap. And as we know, gaps can be multiple things, right? Gaps can be relationships. You don't have mentorship, sponsorship, or people helping you along the way to do that. Sometimes it can be skills. You literally need to learn something, or you need the experience of doing something. Sometimes it's just communications. There's so many different gaps you can have. And your strategy is what helps you bridge that gap and also aligns with your personal and professional brand, because people almost have to see you in that role, or at least understand that you're ready for that role. Now, when I say that, the biggest piece of feedback I always get is like, well, I'm not going to give them, free work because I want the promotion. It's not about giving free work, but it's about maximizing your current job and allowing people to see you in the next job. Because the way I explain it to people is when you have an internal candidate and an external candidate, the external candidate gets to come in and sell folks the world, right? I would come in here and I would change this and change that, and it would work flawlessly because of this and that and that. And they have all this hype around what they're able to do. The internal candidate, because you've been there, you are in a box. Like you created this box for yourself. And it's not a bad box. It's just the box you've created at that company. And in order to step into the new box, and in order for them to see you, you have to give them a taste. You have to understand, you have to make sure that they understand that you are capable. You can't just stay in this box. So figuring out in your strategy, what is it that can help you position yourself and give them a taste of what that next promotion can look like, because you don't have the benefit of kind of overselling sometimes on this side. External interviewing can sometimes be so much easier than even internal interviewing.
I would like to reverse that question for leaders who want to be more mindful about not, putting limitations and putting people in boxes. What can they start to practice to start to kind of have their antennas up to know, okay, this person could potentially be ready to do this move, and just to get out of the, historically speaking, we put people in boxes. We're learning how to shed all of those crazy biases and things that keep us hurting each other. So if a leader is, really keen on, practicing this, practicing what they preach, and really developing the skill, what can they do to avoid that, that trap? I would say it's a box, and sure, we have it for a reason, but I think more oftentimes than not, especially if you come from an underserved or underheard community and you have several gaps because of where you come from, maybe they don't have that support to move through those limitations. I'd love to just hear you reflect on that.
No, I love that you flipped it. So number one, realize that your job is more than being a taskmaster, right? I think as a manager, many times it's like, how can you drive, get this done, get this done. Of course, people need to get their work done. That's like the base level of getting their work done. But after someone is getting their work done, even when you're in the interview process, figure out, what do they want their next move to be? What does success in their career look like? And again, so simple, right? But so many people don't have discussions with their employees to understand what their next move should be or what they want it to be, and figure out how to help that happen, how to make that happen. When you're a leader and you cultivate the ability for your team to be transparent with you, I promise you, your team is going to be so much stronger, so much more vulnerable with you. they'll start to tell you. Imagine if your team was so open and honest with you that they told you when they were thinking about another job. They told you when they, I'm getting a little itchy, like I need to be promoted, like what's happening. And you were able to even think about succession planning ahead of time. When you have a team that is open and honest with their leadership and there's a level of transparency, many times that happens when someone understands you're not going to be in this role forever. And that's the biggest mistake managers make. They hire someone, they maybe think about their career growth, but you're not thinking about your teams. You expect your team to stay in that same lower level role for 10 years while you go on and become a VP and this and that and the third. Your team wants the same thing. So how do you make sure that you have those proactive conversations? And I recommend having them outside of performance appraisal times. Performance appraisal is like a heavy time. That's that rating scale, all those conversations. Have those conversations outside of that so you can make sure you understand what developmentally do they have to do. Make sure that you're not afraid of giving feedback, right? Giving good feedback so people know what they need, what is the gap to get to the next level. I'll never forget, I had a conversation with a team member at a previous job, and she felt like she was ready. She's like, I'm ready to get to the next level. I'm ready. And she was not. I knew she wasn't ready. So I kind of brought up all of our team goals, like everything that everyone had to do on our team, like no names. And I was just like, okay, so where are my goals? I said, no, I said, where are your goals? And she picked like these two. I said, okay, where's this person's goals? She's like, okay, these 2, 3 over here. And I was like, okay, where's this person's goals over here? And I was like, where are my goals? And she's like, oh my God, it's the whole sheet. And it was like 20 goals. And I was like, when you're looking, she wanted to jump to a role that was in my level to make us not, I'm not saying you can't do it, but I'm saying the breadth and scope, you're having a little bit of a hard time here. We need more time mastering what you're doing before you take on 20 goals, because that's the gap between where you are and where my level is right now. And she had no idea that that was the scope. And it wasn't about like, I'm so much better than you or I'm so much higher than you. But at that level of job, the responsibility was so much greater. And she was having trouble with her area, but wanted to make sure she was ready. So we really broke down. I was like, okay, so now that we know this is the scope, how can we expand your role? How can we let you touch some of these things? How can we make sure that you're more visible, more seen, and you're taking on more responsibilities? Many times managers won't have that conversation. And trust, it was tough. It was a tough conversation. But otherwise she wouldn't have known. So when then she was going through interviews, she kind of learned how to position herself a little bit better about her breadth and scope. We thought about different ideas, different programs that could help prepare her when she's ready to kind of make that leap.
Beautiful. And that's, I mean, that is kind of like a passive approach to mentorship, right? Like you're showing this person that might think that they are ready, but really you work with this person often enough to know that you clearly you have a missing piece of the puzzle. Let me show you that, like the visibility, transparency. I love that you're actually practicing this in the examples that you're giving. So thank you so much. I know that maybe some people need to hear that. And actually we have someone who has written in the chat box, speaking of strategy, career strategy. Michelle writes, I agree with you that you need a strategy. I haven't had one and I am 20 years in, and now I realize I should have done this. So I'm starting from scratch. Any piece of advice, for Michelle and people who are probably thinking the same, that they're just starting to build a career strategy and maybe they think that they should have done that a while ago?
It's never too late. Ever, 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 ever. It is never too late to have a career strategy. I think if anything, you may be at a bit of an advantage because you have more skills you can leverage versus someone who's earlier on. You have more breadth and scope of experience. You've seen more things, you've done more things. And now because you have more to pull from, you can be much more specific on where you'd like to go. So when you're doing that exercise we talked about earlier about determining what skills you want to use, kind of how can you magnify those? Because many times when I've seen people have been like, they've been in their career a while, the one thing they're generally missing is magnifying the things that they're really good at. Becoming known for like the thing. How can you make sure people know that this is the box you want to play in? Of course, the lid is open, right? That we're not going to close it. Like this is the thing that you want to move and magnify. And that's the biggest piece of the strategy. How do you make sure that you're known for what you want to be known for in order for you to move and excel? because many times the people have been in their career for a while. A lot of folks who I work with who are probably in that like late 30s to like mid 40s realm, I find that sometimes they're underemployed because they've stayed too long someplace. They've needed a promotion a whole bunch of years ago. And now they're like, I need to get it together. I want to get to the level that I know I should be at, so that people who are less senior, you see them moving faster. So it's taking all those skills, taking the top off and making sure that you magnify your brand so it aligns with where you'd want to go. But it is by no means too late at all. You can create a strategy today.
Yes, please do it. So Michelle, you hear us. You have our encouragement. Go ahead and create that strategy today. And anyone else who feels like it's that they want to jump on the boat. I totally agree with you. That I think I started off by saying change is the only thing that's constant. So well,
Yeah,
it's never too late.
that was my yearbook quote
Yes, I
in high
love that.
school. Yeah.
So we've got about 3 minutes left. I just want to take some intentional time to invite people to actively network with us. So you can do that by dropping your LinkedIn in the chat box or whatever preferred way of connecting you have, so that we can start to practice what we preach here. Maybe if you're thinking of pivoting, you need some extra eyes on your resume or cover letter, reach out to some people who drop their links in the chat box. Use this time to your advantage. I will start by dropping my LinkedIn as well, and hopefully we get some more people dropping theirs in. And of course, we will send you a rewatch email with Kimberly's information, so that you all can connect with Kimberly. We have a private question that came up here that I love. Sorry, this is not private. Eileen sent this in the public chat, and I love that you put this in the chat box, because I was actually going to try to close this out with some DEI chatter, which is totally, I feel like Kimberly can just drop a lot of knowledge here. So we've got about 2 minutes. So try to respond.
Gonna be fast. Lightning round. I read
Lightning
it.
round, and then connect with Kimberly when we finish this. But thank you for dropping this in the chat box, Eileen. Okay, so the question is, tech companies report challenges with talent pipeline to increase diversity and inclusion in response to findings and disparities. What are some game-changing strategies, or just one, just to end this conversation with, what is a game-changing strategy for diverse candidates, internal and external, to stand out or elevate their visibility for consideration in these D&I recruitment initiatives?
Oh gosh, again, you're going to be mad because it's the same answer I gave before, but it's relationships. Just because a company has a DEI strategy and initiative, because let's be serious, everybody does right now. Everybody wants women and people of color, especially in higher level leadership positions. The only thing that can expedite your success are relationships. So really taking the time to look at the companies, look at the top companies you want to work at, make relationship with people there, try and look up people in your alumni network from grad or undergrad and reach out. That's what can help elevate your resume, and also participate in all the things that these companies are doing. They're investing in conferences, they're investing in organizations like Power to Fly. Make sure that you're attending the events, connecting and networking to help yourself stand out, so you're not just another resume that came through at an event. Because companies know this, they're getting so many more applications. The only thing that's going to help you stand out is having a relationship outside of, that fun techie stuff in the background where they can do an analysis of your resume. Relationships are going to make a big difference.
Thank you. And that authenticity piece, right? Being intentional about it, knowing that this is going to serve you and not just doing it for lip service. Because I think that some of us get lost in the sauce. It's like, I don't want to be in social media because blah, blah, blah. It's like, taking that empowerment by connecting and nurturing relationships. I love that you're highlighting that. So we've got no time left, but I do want you to leave us with some food for thought. You've dropped so much knowledge so far. And I know that I want to give folks some more time to connect with folks with their LinkedIn's that they've written in the chat box. So Kimberly, leave us with some food for thought, and then remind us how we can connect with you when we finish this conversation.
Definitely. So my favorite food for thought is my business's manifesto. And that is, you must believe in yourself and your vision. When you do this, you will manifest the life you desire. And I say this because in any career move that people are looking to make, it starts with belief in yourself. Belief that you can actually do it. Belief in your skills, your impact, your value, your transformation. You have to believe in that first before you go to make any career transition ever, really. So I want you to, as you're thinking about making your moves, remember, like, you're spending time at, what time is it? This is 2:00. So you've been here from 1 to 2:00 in the middle of the day. To me, that tells me you're already a high performer or high potential, at least. Nobody goes to career things for fun. Like, we know this, right? Nobody logs out in the middle of the day to listen to career stuff, career podcasts. That means you're high potential and you want to be. So just believe that you have the ability to make whatever move it is. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can go to KimberlyBCummings.com, Kim B Cummings on Instagram, on Twitter, all the places. Shoot me a DM, talk to me. I'm always looking forward to connecting. And again, my book is Next Move, Best Move, Transitioning into a Career You'll Love, available wherever books are sold.
Yes, what a beautiful way to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Kimberly, and thank you everyone who's joined us live. Good luck. Be you unapologetically, and we'll see you on the next chat. Bye.